You're listening to the Escape into Gaming podcast with your host, Nathan, aka Kilnieth. Join us as we explore escapism into the various weird and wonderful worlds of video games. Whether it's something immersive and first person, or something deep and strategic, we will be escaping boredom, stress, pain, and pressure with dragons, racing, space, and sneaking. And without further ado, let's get started.
Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of the Escape into Gaming podcast, where we explore and deep dive into escapism within video games. In this week's episode, we'll be covering some of the recent gaming news from Valve, chatting about games that we're currently playing, and finishing off with our deep dive into the world of conspiracy and choices that is Deus Ex. But before any of that, I would like to say a huge thank you to absolutely everybody who listened to the first episode and gave me some feedback. It's absolutely wonderful to get any and all forms of feedback, provided it's not, completely horrible or something. But yeah, feedback is huge. Like, when it comes to putting something out there, if you don't know how it's being received by people, it gives you such a sense of uncertainty that you just can't learn from that, I find. So thank you so much for everybody who let me know that the first episode was rather quiet. Funnily enough, my microphone turns out to be a side address microphone, and this entire time I've been speaking into it from the top. So yeah, that's one change I've immediately made, and I can immediately see the difference when I'm looking at the audio. So thanks for pointing that out. I am also trying to learn more about audio processing, things like de-essing and all that kind of all those weird and wonderful words. And why the heck decibels is measured in minus? That's something I'm wrapping my head around. But yeah, when it comes to like the podcast, it was kind of an idea of just put it out there, see what the reception is, see what people say about it, and I am so heartwarmed that people enjoyed the first episode. So thank you very much for giving it a listen. I did forget to mention in the first episode the schedule for the podcast. So the plan is that episodes will be released weekly at 6 p.m. UK time on Fridays. That means it can be there for people to wind down for the weekend. Hopefully it's Friday around the world for the most part. And before you get into the weekend, maybe there'll be some inspiration as to what you can play, or maybe you can just wind down from work with a few gaming stories and things like that. But the general structure of each episode is going to be a brief bit of gaming news at the start. I don't want it to be a gaming news podcast. There's loads of awesome places for that. So I don't want to be on that front. But if it's gaming news that resonates with me, if it's something where I'm like, ooh, that's interesting, that's something I really want to highlight. Going over the games that I'm currently playing, just briefly talking about what I'm up to at the time. Maybe that'll get a bit of conversation going. And then, of course, the main focus game for the episode. So each episode, there's going to be like a game or a series of games that we're going to focus on and talk about for the majority of the episode. But yes, another thing I forgot to do was the special thanks, because there are two people without which this podcast just would not have even started. It would have languished in procrastination for the longest time. And first of all, I would like to thank Trash Panda for the logo design, because I am not a designer. I'm not in any way graphical. I can't draw to save my life. And, when it comes to a podcast, when it comes to anything that needs to be branded, you need to have a visual identity out there. You need to have something people can look at to, know what it is that they're identifying with. So with a very small, very wafty brief with about 1 million directions and none of them concrete, Panda managed to absolutely nail it. And I love the designs that he's come up with. All those icons and everything, they capture escaping into gaming perfectly, I feel. So thank you very much, Panda. Panda is wanting to lean more into his design background. So if you're looking for... If you've got a Twitch channel or anything, you're looking for some emotes or you want some branding of your own, do definitely give Trash Panda with 2 A's on the Panda, do give him a shout. I'll try and put a link. Well, there should be a link to his Twitch profile in the main podcast description, which I assume is going to show up everywhere. If not, I'll see like where per episode notes exist and if I can put that there. And the other person I would like to thank is B Technician for the fantastic intro to the episode. He is an aspiring voice actor. He does some amazing voices. I've heard him do, people from Crash Bandicoot, Scooby-Doo, The Merchant from Resi 4, all that kind of thing. He's got a great range. He's very enthusiastic, and he was kind enough to do the intro to every episode. Which I think adds that little level of gravitas that you need for, a podcast. If it was just me saying, "Oh, hey up," welcome to the podcast, I think it'd be a bit weird. So thank you so much, B Technician, for providing that as well. And like I say, without these, I would never have committed. I'd never have actually seen the podcast as a thing that could have actually happened. So thank both of you very much. So, for gaming news, last week, Steam, or rather Valve, announced something very, very exciting. They announced that they are making a bunch of new hardware. They are making a VR headset that works in standalone and in streaming mode. They announced the Steam Machine, which is a name I haven't heard for many, many years. I remember the first attempt of Steam Machines, and it was it didn't go too well for them, but it was the start of something special, and it has led to the version of Steam that we all use today. We all know and love, and more importantly, it led to the development of Steam OS. Which powers the current version of the Steam Deck. And they also announced a really, really awesome looking and sounding Steam controller. And I want to highlight this piece of news actually because there's been a lot of discussion about it, both in the positives and in the negatives. First of all, the Steam controller, where it can detect whether your fingers are on certain buttons and stuff like that, and you can selectively activate like gyro controls. Oh, that sounds to me like the best controller in the world. I think the only thing they could have potentially done a bit better is if it had haptic triggers like the PS5. I adore the PS5 controller for the haptic triggers. I think they add a level of immersion to games that, I've played Warframe on the PS5, for example, and every single weapon feels different in your hand. Like a bow feels like it's got tension on it when you're pulling in the triggers. So if they'd have done that with the Steam controller, absolute instant buy. As it stands at the moment, I've got far too many controllers. I've got a bit of a controller buying problem, to be honest, and I blame 8BitDo mainly. But the exciting thing about the Steam controller is it's got the touchpads on it as well, which means that even for games that don't have a controller setup, like a control scheme for controllers, you should be able to move the mouse around effortlessly, just like it was like a laptop trackpad or something like that. So that's really exciting. The headset, the VR headset, is going to be running SteamOS on it, which is really cool because some of you may know I am a Linux fan, a Linux advocate, I always have been, and Linux and VR doesn't play very well together historically and up to now. Like, for me to use VR stuff through Linux, I have to use a third-party program called ALVR, which kind of pretends to be a headset and then it wirelessly streams it to I've got one of those Quest 2 headsets. And it works. Don't get me wrong, it's great, but actually having native VR stuff running in Linux is super exciting. First of all, the headset itself, you can launch games from it. You can also launch non-VR games, so you can essentially have a massive screen and play the game using the controllers, which have every button on as well. It's not like some VR controllers where you're limited by the amount of buttons that are there, so that's really cool. But the main thing is this Steam machine, this computer, essentially, that Valve are coming up with. It's awesome looking. It looks, it harkens back to like a GameCube, where you've got this big square box that's sat there playing your games on. It is a PC. It is going to be running SteamOS, which is Linux, and the interesting thing is, Valve have actually replied to some people's concerns about this, and they've said that the Steam machine itself is going to be equal or better to what about 70% of people currently have at home. And I really want to kind of just stress that point, because Valve, if anybody's installed Steam and ran some games from it, every now and then you get the hardware survey pop up where you can send Steam a report of what CPU you're using, how much RAM you have, what kind of drives you've got installed, and what graphics card you're using. So for Valve to then say that the hardware in this Steam machine is equal or better to what 70% of people have, that's a very high number. That means they are looking at those stats that they've got, all of the information that they got, and this thing is actually going to be quite capable. They've quoted for some games achieving up to 60 FPS at 4K or 1440p. I don't know the difference between 4K and 1440. Maybe 1440 is slightly lower, but I do everything at 1080p, to be honest. I've never really ran anything above 1080p resolution. And honestly, if you've got a device like that plugged into a little 1080p monitor or something, I think it's going to run most things fine. And the main thing when it comes to gaming, at least for me, I know absolutely everybody's different. Some people really want the best possible visuals and that. But when you look at a lot of modern games where they're relying heavily on DLSS and FSR and XESS and all these AI upscaling methods and that, they're actually running a 720p version of the game and then using tomfoolery to make it look like it's 1080p or 4K or something, and trying to make fake frames to make it feel a bit smoother than it is. And it adds lots of feeling problems. It adds input latency and stuff like that, so the games don't feel as smooth as they could be. So for Valve to say this device is going to run stuff at 60 FPS 1440p, to me that says it's going to run everything at 1080p absolutely excellently for the most part. I've seen some people say the GPU in it is akin to a 7600 XT or something, an AMD one. I'm pretty sure that's what I've actually got in my my gaming machine. So if it's as powerful as that in this little tiny cube, that's insane. And you can install more RAM in it if you want to do. You can install a bigger SSD into it. I just think this opens up the door so much more for people who are traditionally console gamers. People who normally buy PlayStations, people who normally buy Xboxes, they've got that comfort level of just putting something under the TV, plugging it in, turning it on, and it just, works perfectly with a wireless controller. I think that this opens the door up for those people to experience more games, more variety of games, as well as things like being able to mod games. You generally can't mod games on consoles. You can't download random mods that change the way the games work or replace a bunch of scripts or even fix games in some cases. So this will be a great way for people to have more access to modding, but also emulation as well. People have turned Steam Decks into absolute beastly emulation machines that can run PS2 games. I think they can even run Xbox 360 and PS3 games as the emulation capabilities improve. So you are no doubt going to be able to do that on a Steam machine as well. And because it's an actual PC and it's running full-blown Linux, I think this could be an absolute game changer for the creator marketplace as well. There's lots of people I've spoken to who have said that they really want to get into streaming or video production and stuff like that, but they've only got a PS4, for example, and then they need to buy a capture card to get the footage, and then they need a PC to be able to edit and everything. If you've got this box that runs all the games and runs Linux, so you can just have OBS recording in the background, job's a good one. Problem solved. So this is really, really cool news, and Valve have done huge things for the Linux ecosystem. When I first started using Linux, I think it was about 2005, 2006 or something. It was a version of Ubuntu called Warty Warthog, because Ubuntu use alliterated animal names as the code names for each release. And it was cool. It did all the stuff that I needed it to do, like text editing, spreadsheets, web browsing, all that kind of stuff. But gaming was not there at all. And you fast forward a few years, we had this compatibility tool called Wine that allowed you to run Windows programs, but it was always hit and miss whether it actually cooperated and whether games even ran well, never mind anything else. But because of Valve's original work on the Steam machine and kind of this investment into the Linux ecosystem, they started working on like their own version of Wine, which they've called Proton. And Proton has hit a milestone recently where 90% of Windows games work perfectly in Linux. And that's what's led to the Steam Deck being possible. You know, now that they've got that compatibility level, they don't have to pay a Windows license to have a device out that can run these games. They can just be run within Linux. Caveat to that is some games and some developers, they specifically don't tick a box to say, allow this anti-cheat on Linux, looking at you, Rockstar. But, you know, there's other games that exist. You don't have to play Grand Theft Auto. I mean, considering the news around GTA 6, I don't think I will be playing that. But, yeah, for the most part, like every game I want to run works in Linux. It's super exciting. I think the pricing is probably going to be the biggest caveat when it comes to the success of all of this hardware. The VR headset, I can imagine that being fairly expensive. VR headsets tend to be, unless they're budget ones like the Quest 2 was. The controller probably going to be reasonably priced, maybe 60-70 quid, something like that. But yeah, the Steam machine, that's the one where it's really interesting, because if they price it to compete with an Xbox Series or a PlayStation 5, they are competing directly with companies like Microsoft and Sony who publish games on Steam. So they are competing with people who essentially provide them money by releasing games there. So that's one thing they're going to be cognizant of as they price this device. The other thing is they have said, rather than viewing this as a console, you should view this as a reasonably spec'd out PC. So that to me says it's going to be maybe 600-700 quid, something like that. But on the other hand, somebody, I think it was Mr. Sujano on YouTube, who mentioned that if this is priced aggressively competitively to other consoles and such, what's no doubt going to happen is that businesses who are looking for reasonably powerful PCs to have in their call centres and stuff, well, instead of buying a Dell, instead of buying a Lenovo, they're going to buy a bunch of Steam machines, and there's going to be none left in the market for the actual target audience of gamers. So, they haven't said what the pricing is going to be yet, but I do think a little bit of slack needs to be given for those pricing concerns. Like, what you're getting here isn't just a piece of hardware that could quite easily fail and isn't going to be looked after and cared for. First of all, Valve are working with iFixit, who provide like repair instructions and tools and upgrades and stuff like that. They've done that with the Steam Deck, so they've made that super easy to take apart and replace the SSD and clean out the fans, all that kind of stuff. So you're actually getting a device that's designed to last and be maintainable. And at the same time, it's a device that is powered by a company that keyword being so far, but Valve have got a bit of a monopoly as far as PC gaming is concerned. That's apparently the official stance, but it's for good reason, because they've actually been a good company. Like, years and years back, Steam had the Indie Greenlight program where you could vote towards pitches for games and see whether they could be released on Steam, and therefore have access to all those kind of sales and the promotion and marketing and all that kind of stuff as well. So the impact that Steam and Valve have had on the gaming industry, not even paying attention to their games like Half-Life and Portal and Counter-Strike and all that kind of stuff, but the impact that Valve have had on the gaming industry has been hugely positive compared to some other companies out there. So yeah, I definitely think it's something to look forward to and be excited about, because it could be absolutely huge. So, in terms of games that I've been playing recently, I have been playing an awful lot of Payday 2 and 3. And it's so weird actually, like, playing those games, because I've had Payday 2 in my Steam library for years and years and years at this point. I can't honestly remember whether I bought it in a sale, whether I got it from a Humble Bundle or something, or whether I was one of the lucky ones, because I think a fair few years ago they actually gave away 5 million copies of it on Steam. Like, it was completely free on Steam for a while, for a celebration of some sort. But it's always been sat there, and I've launched it a couple of times, flailed around a bit, not having a clue what I'm doing. I remember once joining a multiplayer lobby, and there's this intense music going on, and I'm getting shot from absolutely everywhere and stuff, and there's no voice chat in the game, or at least the voice chat is broken, so no idea what I'm doing, playing with complete randos. Didn't like it, turned it off, uninstalled it, never touched it again. And I think it was a few months ago, I was asking in the Discord if anybody knew of games with really good gun customization, because I had like a real inkling for like wanting to attach, things to the barrel, attach different scopes, modify the magazines and all that kind of stuff. Every now and then you go through these inklings of things you really want. It's like flavors, isn't it? And I really wanted a game with good gun customization, and the two games that were suggested to me, I remember it was Vector, I think, who suggested Payday 2, and then it might have also been Vector, or it could have been somebody else who suggested Fallout 76. And I remember downloading Payday 2 again, installing it, clicking on play offline because I didn't want a repeat experience of last time, and doing some random bank robbery and managing to do it. I think I succeeded, but it felt odd. It felt weird. I didn't like the way the aiming felt. I didn't like the way the movement felt and that. So I kind of just binned it off. The UI as well is, I must say, not the best in the world. But I just kind of binned it off. Didn't pay any attention to it, and ended up diving into Fallout 76 for quite a while. But I think I watched a video recently where somebody was talking about Payday 3 and how allegedly bad that game is, and it kind of spurred me to look a bit more into the Payday series. And I mean, believe me, I've been going on some deep dives. I've been looking into the development information, all the drama and stuff around one of the guys in the studio that was obsessed with celebrities and stuff like that. But yeah, I downloaded Payday 2 again and thought, you know what, I'll give it an actual try. I'll try the career mode, which is kind of like a stringing together of the existing missions to try and make sense of them, almost give it a storyline, and also a bit of a gradual curve in terms of difficulty and stuff as well. And as I started getting into it and playing it more, first of all, playing with a controller was hugely helpful. Like, I'm so bad at seeing enemies when it's something that looks when it's something that isn't stylized, like say Warframe, for example, where the enemies can kind of blend into the background. I was getting the same thing on Payday 2, where all of the enemies were just part of the scenery, and I find it hard to visually tell between them. And there's a fair bit of controller aim assist on when you're using a controller with it, so that was actually hugely helpful in helping me actually succeed at the game. But as I got more into it and I'm playing more of these missions and realising, I think the key thing I realised is that there is an impressive attention to detail in these maps. Like, it's not something visually mind-blowing, it's not the most graphically intensive game in the world. It kind of looks like something from around the time of Half-Life 2, which I guess actually it probably was, because it was inspired by Left 4 Dead. And I had a bit of a mindset shift, because I love stealth games. I absolutely adore, like, the Metal Gear series, for example, or Thief, even better. Thief, I absolutely adore. So I was kind of playing Payday 2 like a stealth game, and you can, don't get me wrong, but when you realise that the moment of being detected isn't a case of you failed at stealth, it's literally a context switch of now you've activated the other half of the game, which is essentially a horde shooter, something akin to Left 4 Dead. That's when I started really having fun of it, because I wasn't seeing me being spotted by a guard as me failing. All of a sudden it was, oh, right, this has happened. This is a situation that's occurred. Now I need to pivot over into this other mindset of, how do I look after my health? How do I look after my armour? How do I achieve these objectives whilst tons and tons of police officers are storming the building? And it's been an absolute blast. I've been really, really enjoying it. Played it a bit multiplayer with Panda and some members of the community as well. It's got a surprising level of depth, and it's even got some RPG mechanics in the skills that you can level up and the perk points that you can pick. So you can have tons of different builds. Of course, you can customize your guns like to a ridiculous degree. You can change the red dot sight if you want. If you've got a red dot sight on your gun, you can actually change it to be green, or you can change the shape of it. You know, you can customize the masks because all of the heisters wear these masks to hide their identity. And my favourite thing about it is the randomization. There is actually a surprising amount of RNG that dictates where rooms are in the game. So like, you might go into a map and there's 3 closets with mops in them, for example, but one of them is going to be the security room where the guard that's watching all the CCTV is located. But if you run that exact same heist again, there is no guarantee that room you went to last time, it's probably turned into a broom closet with a mop in it. You know, the room has actually physically moved to a different location, so the rooms can be randomized. The objective locations can be randomized. There's a bunch of secret weapon packages you can find hidden around the levels as well. That can be randomized, and even whether you escape in a van or a speedboat or a helicopter, for example, that can be randomized. So every single time you play in this game, it's really fresh and exciting. You never quite know what you're going to get. So if you do have it in your library, do give it a check. If you do fancy playing multiplayer, give us a shout in the Discord. Payday 3 is great feeling. I can see that it does need a bit more work. It's kind of lacking some of that randomization, which I think was core for Payday 2 being so fun and so replayable. So I do think Payday 3 needs a bit more work, but from what I've seen, I really like where it is. I can see a lot of improvements, and it does seem like the developers are listening to feedback. So if you've never played Payday, do give it a check out. I can definitely recommend it. But yes, without any further ado, we are going to get to our main game for this week's episode. So today's focus game is Deus Ex, which is a game that I've only recently discovered is actually taking the crown for my favourite game of all time, or at least the whole Deus Ex series is. Because I've spent many, many years believing that Morrowind is my favourite game of all time, but the funny thing is, when I go back and replay Morrowind, it's always almost the same experience. Like, you know what the story is going to be, you know where the enemies are going to be, you know what you need to do to get the quests done, and you can vary things up. Don't get me wrong, you can build different characters, but there are definitely strategies that work. there are strategies for success in Morrowind that mean there is almost like an optimal way of playing the game. But when it comes to Deus Ex, there are so many approaches to everything you do. I just find that every time I replay Deus Ex, especially the first one, you'll find new routes to go, new dialogue options you didn't know exist. The game was released in 2000 and it's very much a product of its time. It's one of those games where, similar to Morrowind or similar to things like Phantasy Star Online, for example, it's very visually polygonal. You can see all of the squares and triangles and shapes that make up every single thing in the game. But it has these really sharp textures, at least on the PC version. So what I would say is it's a game that looks like a video game. You can tell it's a video game, but it's leaning into that aspect of we're trying to be as realistic as possible with the technology that we have at the time. So it's not like today's games where a lot of them are just let's try and be ridiculously photorealistic and have no creative elements to it whatsoever. I mean, they've got creative elements, but it's just a different visual appearance. You can tell it's a game. You can kind of accept it for what it is as a game, but it still looks nice. I think it holds up rather well. Although one caveat I must say is there was recently an announcement of a Deus Ex remaster, like a remaster of the first game, that looks absolutely horrendous. It just looks awful. If you want to play Deus Ex, get the original version. There is also a mod for the original Deus Ex called Deus Ex Revision. It does change some stuff in the games, but it gives you higher resolution character models, higher resolution textures and stuff. It looks visually like a lot better than this actual official remaster, so get that one. But yeah, Deus Ex was directed by Warren Spector, who previously had worked at Looking Glass Studios and worked on games like System Shock and Thief. And the DNA of those games is very much visible within Deus Ex because you've got the stealth mechanics, you've got the sneaking around and stuff, but you've also got RPG mechanics, kind of like System Shock, where you had the different, or at least System Shock 2, you can level up all these different stats and stuff like that. And I would say that Deus Ex is one of the most RPG games of all time, because your stats play a huge difference in like what kind of routes you can take, what kind of options are available to you as a character, whether it's safe for you to go in guns blazing, or whether it's better off for you to find a vent that you can lockpick up and sneak through and avoid combat and stuff like that. And you're actually playing a role as well. You play the character of JC Denton, who starts off working for this anti-terrorism organisation called UNATCO. And he's not a silent protagonist, but he is kind of this character you can project yourself into, because he comes across very dry. Like the things he say is very straight to the point, matter of fact. You know, he doesn't really have much emotion behind him. So he's a bit of a blank slate character.
Are you kidding? The UN's about the only chance we've got these days. If the US spirals into another civil war.
And when it comes to like the director, Warren Spector, the coolest thing about the development of Deus Ex in my mind is when he moved from Looking Glass Studios to Ion Storm, which was a studio John Romero created of id Software and Doom fame. He basically said, look, I'm going to give you this opportunity to make the game of your dreams. Like, there is no marketing pressure that it needs to be a certain type of game or it needs to do any certain kinds of things. You know, you're not limited by any of that. I just want you and your mind to go and create your ideal game. And the result of that is Deus Ex. And you can tell there's so much, like, passion and depth and... what I can't think of the word. It's like mastercrafted. You know, this was a game. It's got its flaws. Don't get me wrong, but based on the engine they were using, which I think is a modified version of the Unreal 2 engine, they managed to set out and accomplish everything they wanted. They've got a complex story that goes in tons of different directions. They've got twists and turns all over the place. You've got gunplay that was, you know, all right. First-person shooters, especially on console, were not anything to shout about back in the day. Can't remember if this was before or after Halo, actually, because I think Halo was the one that revolutionised FPS games. But yeah, they were all very, like, if you think of the early Call of Duties where your gun, like, wiggles around the screen and this crosshair moves around, Deus Ex was that. And funnily enough, like, the version of Deus Ex that I played originally was the PS2 version. And it was so weird, like holding L2 and moving the right stick around so that this crosshair would move around. You'd stay still. You were stuck where you'd planted your feet, but you could at least aim around and, you know, try and get headshots and stuff like that. But the Deus Ex, the world of Deus Ex is one where it's kind of asking the question, what if every single conspiracy theory was real? And what if they were all connected to one another? So you've got man-made viruses, you've got vaccines that are being withheld, you've got corporations that are spying on everybody, you've got governments that are in bed with pharmaceutical companies and secret organisations like the Illuminati, Majestic 12. You've even got aliens, which I think, can't remember if it's the first game or the second game that actually reveals that the Greys, the aliens that you meet, are actually man-made as well. And in the first game, you also visit one of the coolest locations in the world, the most mysterious conspiracy, theory location, which is Area 51. You actually, the end of the game culminates in visiting Area 51. But before we get into any of the later game stuff, the game begins on the pier of the Liberty Island where the Statue of Liberty is. So immediately on launching into the very first mission of the game, there is a tutorial section that'll guide you through the controls and aiming, shooting, lockpicking, all that kind of stuff. But when you start the actual game, you are dropped off after a very epic cutscene that sets the storyline in motion. You're dropped off on the pier to Liberty Island, and one of the things I've always loved the most about Deus Ex is in this very first segment of the very first time you play in the game, there are already secrets. Because if you go under the pier, if you decide to go for a swim, I think in most games it's fair to say, if you see water, you're kind of like, oh, is this GTA 3 where you die if you go in the water, or can you actually swim? Don't tell me you haven't done it. I know you've done it in every game. But once you decide to go for a swim, you'll find a crate hiding out underneath the pier, and you can break that open and get your first multi-tool, which is a hacking device. And it's just always made me smile a little bit, the simplicity of allowing the player to explore in the very first scene that you ever go in and immediately find a secret, because multi-tools are hella useful, let me tell you. The game is filled with those moments. You have choice upon choice upon choice everywhere you look in the game. Your brother will approach you and, kind of welcome you to the island and say, right, the island's been taken over by these terrorists, we need to deal with them. How would you like to go about doing that? I can give you a tranquilizing crossbow, if you want to be all sneaky. Or I can give you a GEP gun, which is a guided explosive projectile gun. So basically you can have a rocket launcher as soon as the start of the bloody game. Which I don't think many games do that. I think many games hold off the big toys until later, but not this one. This one says, if you want to go that route, if you want to go in guns blazing, you absolutely can do. And the freedom that you get in this very first Deus Ex is something that I think to this day is not something that games have recaptured again. There are games that have got very close to it. Obviously, Deus Ex it became a series. There is 4 games in the series. Well, there's a mobile spin-off as well, but I don't think many people talk about that. But as a series, it's never been as freeing as the very first one was. Even other immersive sim games, that's kind of the category that these games fall under. They're called immersive sims. You've got games like 2017's Prey that came pretty darn close. Prey is another one of my absolute favourite games. You've got Dishonored, of course. That's also an immersive sim game, but nothing quite comes close to the level of marrying the physical gameplay mechanics, as in the way your character moves and gets around and the tools they have available to them, with the combat. So whether you're going loud and heavy or whether you're going silent and sneaky, plus the RPG mechanics and what you'll later find in the game, which is the augmentation system, which are actually kind of like your special abilities. I mean, you start off with a flashlight that doesn't even look like a flashlight. It's just like this dot of light that appears on the floor depending on where you're pointing and stuff. But yeah, a lot of the other games, like Dishonored, you have a heck of a cool move set. Don't get me wrong, you can move around and do some crazy stuff on that, but you're always limited to a crossbow, a pistol, and a sword. And I think that's I think that's about it as far as I can remember for that game. There are so many different weapons in Deus Ex. You start off with a 9mm pistol. I think you also start off with a stun rod, like a cattle prod kind of thing. So if you sneak up behind enemies, you can knock them unconscious. You can find crowbars, so you can embrace your inner Gordon Freeman and start going around crowbarring everyone. Later on, you can find a silenced pistol, so you have a lethal method that is also, suppressed and not going to alert guards to where you are. You've got a machine gun, you've got a shotgun, you've got a sniper rifle, and of course the get gun. You've got a variety of different grenades that can also be planted as mines, so they're kind of 2-in-1 devices. And it's just so freeing, and depending on your skill level with each of these weapons will depend how good your aim is, because if you put your crosshair on an enemy, and this is a point of contention with a lot of players, but if you put a crosshair on an enemy, if you're not skilled in that particular weapon you're using, your crosshair will be huge. There is a ginormous margin of where your attacks are actually going to end up landing. Unless you kind of stay and steady your aim and wait, and the crosshair will kind of gradually go in and become more accurate to the point of being pinpoint accurate, and that's dictated on your skill level. If you specialise in pistols, for example, you'll find that your crosshair is pinpoint accurate the majority of the time, whereas if you are spec'd into pistols and then you pick up a sniper rifle, you will find that your aim is wild and all over the place. And I think that's another element where the RPG mechanics are marrying up perfectly with the physical gameplay mechanics, the actual ability to shoot and defend yourself. But yeah, you go out into Liberty Island, and literally as soon as you get up the stairs, there'll be an enemy patrolling around. So this is your first decision of, how do I resolve the situation? Do I want to sneak around him? You don't have to my knowledge. I think the first Deus Ex game you could actually get through without killing any enemies whatsoever, or even knocking them unconscious. I think if you're sneaky enough, you could probably do a leave everybody alone run kind of thing. But as you go around the island, you'll find that if you go to the left to get to the front doors of the Statue of Liberty, the NSF, they're called, this group that have taken the place over, they have a robot patrolling around out there. There's also a camera watching the main door and a turret. So that is your scary route to go. At the start of the game, it informs you that there is an informant around the back of the island who can help you get into it through a less obvious manner. So if you do go right from the start and all the way around the island, dealing with various enemies along the way, then you can find, I think he's called Harry Philbin, and you have this kind of code phrase moment where you're talking about iron and copper and stuff, which is how the Statue of Liberty is constructed. And it's proper geeking out into this, Secret Service kind of using code words and stuff like that. And I think at this point we should probably talk about JC Denton himself, actually, because when you stood there in these cutscenes, it goes third person and the camera will flick from the NPC that you're speaking to yourself. And JC Denton is a huge fan of The Matrix. That's about the only way I can put it, or at least the developers were huge fans of The Matrix, because you are wearing some body armour and stuff, but you've got this black slicked back hair, you've got sunglasses on, even though it's night, although JC Denton's got a famous quote in regards to that.
My vision is augmented.
And he's wearing this trench coat, this black leather kind of trench coaty thing, which I guess is probably where he keeps all of his inventory in that. But you can tell it was that rule of cool kind of, let's have this character look like he's a badass out of the Matrix or something like that. And there's an uncanny level of you're supposed to be representing this serious anti-terrorist organisation, yet you're dressed with that I just I just can't get over. I find it quite funny. And then you've got his voice coming out as well, as dry as it does. It's just a rather jarring moment. But yeah, you can sneak into the back of Liberty Island, climbing up these crates. There's probably other methods to do it as well. There's so many directions to go, whether you want to go guns blazing, whether you want to go sneaky, whether you want to climb up. Do you keep going up? Do you want to go down and rescue Gunther Herman, another agent who's been captured and has been held in like this makeshift prison or something like that. It's you've got side objectives or almost side quests all over the place as well, especially later on in the game when it really starts to open up. But yeah, you make your way to the top of the Statue of Liberty and you meet the leader, or at least the person organising this particular branch of the NSF, and he says how they were just trying to get some vaccine for this virus that's going around to deliver it to the people instead of it just being there for, you know, the higher ups and the politicians and the executives and that kind of thing. And at this point, you can kind of walk away. The mission's complete. You can follow your objectives, head back to base, and move on. But if you actually stay and talk to him a few more times, you really get this sense of how many conspiracies they were throwing into this game, because this guy will go on and on and on about the background of, you know, presidency, the background of businesses paying certain percentages of tax and this kind of stuff as well. He's knee deep in it, and in this game it's all true. I mean, arguably in real life it's also true to a certain extent, but he proper leans into it, and it's your first kind of sense that something is perhaps a little off. But yeah, following this little incursion, this little kind of opening mission, I wouldn't even call it a tutorial mission because it is just like every other mission in the game, to be honest. With the amount of things that you can do and ways you can go about it, it's very easy to make mistakes, and it's very easy to die as well. You're not invincible in this game. There's repair robots hanging around. One of the advantages to having the ability to use multi-tools and lockpicks is you can actually break into these crates that have medical robots in them, so they will heal you, you know, patch you right up, and you're right as rain after that. But yeah, following the Liberty Island part, you go to the UNATCO headquarters, which is just across the road. It's on the same island, and somehow they've managed to have their entire island taken by these terrorists. That's always been a bit weird. But yeah, you go into this base, and I can't remember if the PS2 version had reflective floors, but the PC version does at least. You go into this place, and it's like these marble floors that are all reflective and nice looking and stuff, and the amazing soundtrack. Like, I've got it on in the background at the moment. That UNATCO theme would go on to be like a mainstay of the series. I think every other game referenced it, including Deus Ex Human Revolution, one of the modern Deus Ex releases. It's such an iconic piece of music. But yeah, you go into a UNATCO, you can explore around, you can find your own office, you can find your brother's office, and you can find Gunther Herman complaining about a vending machine giving him lemon lime instead of orange.
No, I wanted orange. It gave me lemon lime.
On top of that, you can also explore every single room, including the women's bathroom, at which point you will get chastised for doing that by your boss, Joseph Mandalay. But yeah, after some introductions to all of the key players, you've got your boss, you've got the medical guy, you meet the quartermaster as well, who will issue you with a new weapon. Can't remember if it's just a silenced pistol or if you've got a choice, but I tend to go for the silenced pistol at this point. Another cool thing that this game had was weapon mods. I mentioned about weapon customization earlier, but this game had that as well. You could pick up these various weapon mods, which were another kind of reason to explore the levels or complete side quests, because the moment you get a laser sight on your pistol or whatever weapon you're using, it improves its accuracy. You can get scopes, you can get increased magazines, you can get all these kinds of abilities that make your weapons stronger. So when you've picked your favourites or you've found the ones that you are speccing into, you can constantly improve them as well. And not only can you explore around and find these weapon mods, but if you explore, you'll get this little pop-up saying, you know, that you've found a route and you've gained 1,000 EXP points. So throughout the game, the more secret areas you're finding, Kind of feels a little bit like Doom, actually, like when you find a secret area and it pops up saying secret area found. It's kind of a little bit like that, but you actually get tangible benefits from it, like gameplay altering benefits, because you can then put those skill points into, you know, whichever stats interest you. And my strategy for this has always been to kind of hold off on leveling up any of the points until I need them. So if I end up going down a route and I see like a big route that's going to lead underwater and I need to swim through there, at that point I'll probably go into my menu, allocate some skill points towards the swimming ability, and then proceed through that route. Or similarly, you might come up against a level 3 locked door and you might only have a level 2 lockpicking skill. So at that point you can decide, right, I'm going to spend these points, get the lockpicking skill, go through that door and see what's in there. And it could just be a room filled with ammo, could be more weapon mods, could be a secret route, or it could be an entirely new side quest as well. At this point, I should probably mention that the PS2 and PC versions vary quite drastically. Some of it down to hardware limitations. You've got very much smaller levels on the PS2 version that are broken up by more loading corridors. You probably know what I mean, like these corridors where it like bends round in a U shape so that you can't see the other end of the corridor, so you have to go into the corridor, along it. Midway through it, it'll say now loading, and then you continue further on, come around the bend, and there's the next area of the map. I love the obviousness of those load corridors. Whenever you see a corridor that's just empty, like nothing is in it, because they don't want to replicate like movable objects, because if you move it in one map, it's not going to be moved in the other map if you look behind you. That's always a hilarious thing about these loading corridors. Nowadays, a lot of games have decided to do the squeeze through, like between pieces of woods or metal pipes and stuff. Those are the load corridors now. Now every character has to like squeeze through a little gap sideways. But yeah, back in the days of Deus Ex, it was literally a corridor you'd have to walk through, and literally 50% through, that's when you get the now loading message. Anyway, I've gone off on a hell of a tangent here. Back to you, Natko. You speak to your boss and he will tell you to get on the helicopter and head to Battery Park in New York City, where another cell of the NSF have been, they've stolen some of the vaccine, so you need to go and recover that. And following that, you have to get to the subway station, this train station, and deal with a hostage situation, which is very, very delicate. Like, even if you are trying to stealth this, there are so many guards down there that unless you manage to perfectly take them all down without anybody else noticing you, they will literally run over to the button that activates a bunch of TNT and blows up the entire like area, and you fail to rescue the hostages. So yeah, just a heads up, if you do end up playing the game, watch out for that bit. But yeah, once you get on the train, once you've finished everything in Battery Park, you end up in Hell's Kitchen, it's called. And, oh man, what an iconic hub world. Hell's Kitchen is the first of many hub worlds that you visit throughout the course of Deus Ex. And these hub worlds open you up to a bunch of side quests, but more than that, they also give you these huge areas to explore that you'll revisit over the course of whatever current mission that you're doing. And sometimes you even come back to them later on in the game. You can see how your actions in the missions that you're doing have affected things there. You might find NPCs that you helped in the past can give you further help in the future, or you may find that because of something you did, a building has exploded or something like that. And they're these, I call them hub worlds because that's really what they are. You go to multiple of them through the course of playing the game. Hell's Kitchen is the first one you visit. There's a kind of one when you visit France later on in the game, although that's somewhat more linear, but you do end up being able to explore a bunch of different buildings. But one of them that I spent far too much time in was the Hong Kong one, that place is sprawling. You've got marketplaces. You've got VersaLife, which is this creepy pharmaceutical company that's involved in every aspect of the conspiracy. But yeah, you'll go there multiple times. You can find vendors there as well, so you can purchase more ammo. You can sometimes purchase weapon mods, or even outright just buy new weapons as well. And they're an opportunity to kind of wind down from some of the more stressful sneaking around and fighting enemies and that side of things. And it kind of grounds you in not only the kind of depressive nature of the world, because in the world of Deus Ex things aren't great, but it also helps you connect with some of the NPCs that are, just living their lives, going about their business, trying to make the most out of what they've got. In part of the Hell's Kitchen chapter, you'll shut down another NSF operation at a nearby warehouse. You will also visit a underground... I was about to say civilization, but it's not really a civilization, but you'll visit the mole people who are living in the underground railways, the abandoned railways under New York City, which I believe harkens back to something in real life as well. But in here, it's all the conspiracy theorists or the downtrodden who are just, trying to make ends meet and live in this subway system. You'll follow through there and end up in an airport, and somebody you'll deal with one of the NSF leaders on an airplane, and that's the point where the game completely shifts around, because Anna Navarre, one of the other augmented, like the older augmented agents from UNATCO, Gunther Herman and Anna Navarre are both like, let's say, previous generation augmented agents. They are mechanically augmented. They've got replacement arms. You can see like where the flesh is peeling off of where their metal parts kind of come out of and stuff like that. It's kind of body horror creepy in that regards. Whereas JC Denton and Paul Denton, your brother, are both like the next generation of augmentation. And the later games would lean into that, especially Human Revolution and Mankind Divided, because they're played as kind of prequels. You are, like, Adam Jensen is one of the mechanically augmented people, whereas JC and Paul, it's all nanobots, to quote Metal Gear, nanomachines, son. But yeah, Anna Navarre will kind of see you at the end of the mission when you've got this leader of the terrorist organisation in front of you, and he will explain a lot of things that will affect your perception of UNATCO and what's really going on, rather dramatically, especially since it includes your brother Paul as well. So whether you decide to carry out your mission and end Lebedev, whether you decide to just walk away, at which point I believe you hear Anna ending Lebedev, or whether you decide to take Lebedev's side, which is an interesting thing. You can actually turn around and get rid of Anna. You can shoot Anna. She will explode because she's a robot or half a robot. But yeah, you can actually turn against Anna and kind of cover it up with your operator Alex on the what's it called, on the phone basically. It's they call it an info link. That's the comm device you use. Yeah, Alex will try and smooth things over and just say that it was Lebedev that did it. But at that point, you start to question UNATCO, you start to question all the stuff you've been led to believe, and that's when the conspiracy really starts getting interesting. We are probably running out of time. If you can't tell, I could probably go on and on and on and on about Deus Ex, but I hope that from listening to this, it has perhaps inspired you to check out this old game, or even check out some of the newer ones in the series. They are all fantastic games, with player choice being at the absolute forefront of everything you do in the games. And the first one, I just think, has a level of player freedom, player agency, as well as a really interesting storyline that definitely warrants giving it a chance. I will end this section about Deus Ex though by saying that when I was a kid and I had the PS2 version, I wasn't in a place where I could buy very many video games, so I kind of started making the most out of what games that I had. And because I enjoyed this game's sandbox so much, because you could like pick up boxes and move them around, you can pick up most objects, you can pick up plant pots if you really want to. I took that to the extreme where my PS2 memory card was filled with saves from each and every single level in this game, so that I could go back and kind of roleplay living in these environments, which as an adult now looking back on it, it's kind of adorable but also kind of incredibly I just find it hilarious now that I used to like hang around in Hong Kong and pretend I was going to the shop and, you know, buying some soy food and claiming one of the buildings in Hong Kong as my apartment. I almost turned Deus Ex into my own version of The Sims, like a first person The Sims. It was I love that about the game though, because it's like when you slow down a little bit, instead of chasing like the latest and greatest game release that's come out, if you go back to your old games and find new ways of getting enjoyment out of them, not necessarily by turning them into The Sims like I did, but even going back to visit games that you've completed in the past, if you try and play them on the hardest difficulty, for example, or maybe try get that obscure achievement that you've never managed to achieve in a game. That's one way where as game prices are increasing and everything's becoming more expensive, if you spend a bit more time with the games that you already have, you'll probably be surprised at the level of enjoyment you can actually get out of it, rather than hoping the next game gives you that hit of what it is that you're looking for in a game. Just go back to a game that you absolutely know already gives you that hit and try and get a bit more out of it. So, thank you for listening to episode 2 of the Escape into Gaming podcast. I do really hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope things have been better from an audio perspective. Experimented a little bit with mixing some of the game's soundtracks and stuff in this episode, and some clips and stuff like that, which is actually quite a lot of fun. It was quite fun replaying some of the music and just having the little nostalgia dive that is revisiting these tracks from a game that I adore. Hopefully I haven't spoiled the game too much either, so if you do fancy checking the game out, I believe it's pretty cheap on Steam. You can also pick it up on GOG, which means you have the installer to have for forever to love and to hold and cherish. But yes, thank you so much for listening. If you do have any comments and feedback, please feel free to leave them on the YouTube comments. I don't believe other podcast platforms allow comments and stuff like that. But you can always chat with us in the Discord. Right now it's under discord.kilniath.com. There will be a link in the description for the episode. And yeah, we've got kind of a section where per episode we can kind of talk about what was discussed in the episode there. And there's also other gaming channels. Some of the time we hang around and play multiplayer games or just chat generally. So feel free to hang out there. Yeah, thank you once more for listening. It should be Friday. I hope it's Friday where you are. So if it is, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your weekend. And next time we'll be journeying onwards and outwards.